He was parked just past mile marker 12 when he saw the bike. Matte black Harley, no plate he could see. Big frame, rider dressed in leather and patches. The patch caught his eye, a skull gripping a scythe in its teeth. Road Reaper's MC embroidered across the top rucker. Mark's jaw clenched. He'd heard stories about them. Ex-soldiers, ex-cons, men who lived by their own code. They called themselves a brotherhood, but to cops like him, they were trouble wrapped in chrome and leather. He flicked on his lights, the red and blue flashing against the morning fog. The Harley slowed and pulled onto the gravel shoulder. The rider killed the engine and sat perfectly still. Mark stepped out of his cruiser, boots crunching the damp gravel, his hand resting near his holster. License and registration, he called out, voice calm but edged with authority. The biker turned his head slowly. His face was shadowed by his helmet. When he finally spoke, his tone was steady, even polite. "Morning, officer. Something wrong?" "Speeding," Mark replied, "and no visible plate." The man reached into his vest pocket and handed over his ID. Mark looked down at the name. Daniel Rourke. Age 4-4. Local address. The name tugged at something in his memory, but he couldn't place it. "Step off the bike," Mark ordered. Rourke obeyed without a word, moving slow and deliberate, the way men do when they've been trained not to startle anyone holding a gun. Mark checked his saddlebags. All he found were a few tools, gloves, and a folded photo. It was a little girl, maybe 12, smiling with missing teeth, sunlight in her hair. "That your daughter?" Mark asked, his tone softening. "Yeah," Rourke said. "Her name's Lily." "She's beautiful," Mark said quietly. "You live around here?" "An hour south," Rourke replied. "Visiting a friend up this way. Haven't been through in years." Mark nodded, still holding the photo. Something about the man didn't fit the outlaw stereotype. His eyes were steady, his tone measured. He didn't smell of booze or drugs, didn't carry himself like a man hiding anything. He handed the photo back. "All right, you're clear. Just get that plate fixed." "All right." Rourke nodded. "Appreciate it, officer." Then he paused. "You look tired. You all right?" Mark frowned. "I'm fine." Rourke's eyes held us a moment longer. Then he slid his helmet back on and kicked the bike to life. The Harley thundered down the road, vanishing into the mist. Mark stood there for a while, watching the taillight disappear, feeling a strange heaviness in his chest. 3 nights later, the radio crackled. Domestic disturbance on Maple Street. Mark was nearby, so he took the call. When he pulled up, he could already hear shouting. Inside the small yellow house, a woman with a split lip and swollen cheek clutched a child, sobbing. A man stood over her, reeking of alcohol, shouting about how she made him do it. Mark moved fast, pulling the man off her and cuffing him. "You lay another hand on her, and I'll make sure you don't touch daylight for a long time," he hissed. The man smirked. "You don't know who you're messing with. My brother's got friends in the department." The next morning, the man was out. Mark found out over coffee. The bruised woman, Emily, came into the station to withdraw her complaint. He saw the look in her eyes, the same kind he'd seen in too many victims before. The look of someone who knew the law wouldn't protect her. That night, Mark sat in his patrol car watching the same house. Around midnight, the man came home drunk again, yelling before he even hit the front steps. Mark's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. He thought about stepping out, about putting a stop to it. But protocol held him back. 2 nights later, he saw her again, walking along the highway with a duffel bag and a bruise on her neck. He pulled over. "Emily, get in," he said gently. She hesitated, then slid into the passenger seat. He said if I ever left, he'd find me. He won't, Mark said, gripping the wheel tight. Not if I can help it. But deep down, he knew his promise was empty. The system would fail her again, the same way it always did. The next afternoon, word spread fast through town. Emily Carter was missing. Her sister called it in. Her car was found near the old mill, door wide open, phone on the ground. Mark's stomach turned. He knew who did it, and he also knew the department would drag their feet. He wanted to go after the husband himself, but by the time he got to the Carter house, it was too late. The man was gone. That night, Mark sat in his cruiser on the same highway where he'd pulled Rourke over. He couldn't shake the memory of the biker's calm, knowing eyes. Something about that man had felt grounded, righteous even. Mark didn't know why, but he picked up the radio and called an old contact from another county, a biker-friendly mechanic who owed him a favor. "Road Reapers still around?" he asked. The man laughed. "Around? They own half the back roads in this state." "Why?" "I need to talk to their president." "Rourke." There was a long pause. "You sure about that, Mark? Those boys don't take kindly to badges." "I'm not calling as a cop," Mark said quietly. "I'm calling as a man who's tired of seeing good people get hurt." 2 hours later, Rourke showed up outside the diner on Main Street. His bike idled low, headlights cutting through the dark. Mark was already waiting. "Didn't think I'd see you again," Rourke said as he pulled off his helmet. "I need help," Mark said. "A woman's gone missing. I know who took her, but the system's protecting him." Rourke studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Tell me everything." Mark told him about Emily Carter, the abuse, the bruises, the threats, the disappearance. By the time he finished, Rourke's expression was hard as steel. "Where's he hiding?" "Old lumber mill by the river," Mark said. "He's got friends watching his back." Rourke's jaw tightened. "Then we'll bring more friends." Mark hesitated. "You're not talking about calling the cops, are you?" Rourke gave a humorless laugh. "You already tried that. Now it's our turn." Before sunrise, the sound of engines rolled through Willow Creek like thunder. A dozen black Harleys tore down the road, the Reapers riding 2x2. They didn't speak much. They didn't have to. Every man they knew what needed to be done. When they reached the mill, the sun was just breaking over the trees. The place looked dead, but Rourke knew better. He motioned, and two of his men flanked the sides while he and Mark approached the front. Inside, they found Emily, bruised, tied to a chair, eyes wide with fear. Her husband stood behind her, holding a knife. "What the hell is this?" he snarled. "You brought a gang to my doorstep." Mark stepped forward, gun drawn. "Put it down, Trent." Trent sneered. "You don't scare me, cop. You think they're gonna save you? They're criminals." Rourke took a slow step forward. "You don't understand what you've done." Trent raised a knife, but Rourke moved faster. In one motion, he disarmed him, twisting his wrist until the blade clattered to the floor. Trent swung wildly, but Rourke dodged, his movement precise and controlled. The other Reapers pinned him down. Mark rushed to Emily, cutting her free. She fell into his arms, sobbing. "It's over," he whispered. "You're safe now." By the time the sheriff department arrived hours later, the mill was empty. Trent Carter was gone, his car found abandoned on a back road near the county line. No one ever saw him again. The official report said he fled town after assaulting his wife. No evidence of foul play. No suspects. A week later, Emily's sister brought a box of donuts to the station. She thanked Mark quietly and handed him an envelope. Inside was a photo, Emily smiling again, working at a diner in another town. On the back, a note written in neat handwriting. "You kept your word. Thank you." Mark didn't tell anyone what really happened. He just smiled, folded the photo, and slipped it into his wallet beside a picture of his own son. A few days later, as he was leaving the station, he saw a Harley parked by the curb. Rourke sat on it, helmet resting on the tank. "You did good," Rourke said. "So did you," Mark replied. Rourke nodded and reached into his vest. He pulled out a small patch, black and silver, the skull and side emblem stitched neatly. "If you ever need a road that leads somewhere different, we've got one open." Mark looked at the patch. "I'm not one of you." Rourke smiled faintly. "You're closer than you think." He started his bike and rode off, the sound fading into the wind. Mark stood there a long time, staring at the empty road. For years, he believed justice only came through the law. But that night, on a lonely stretch of highway, he realized something else. Sometimes justice was a badge, and sometimes it rides a Harley. He tucked the patch into his jacket pocket and walked back to his cruiser. Later that year, Emily sent another letter. She was doing better, found a small apartment, new job, and she'd started taking night classes. She ended with the same 3 words she'd written before. "You saved me." Mark folded the letter, smiled, and whispered into the quiet of his empty home. "No, Emily, we saved you." He hung up his uniform for good not long after that. The badge no longer felt like the symbol it once was. He didn't quit because he'd lost faith in justice. He quit because he finally learned what it really meant. Months later, a new rumor spread across the county about a man on a black Harley with no patch, who showed up when the law couldn't, who helped a woman escape her abuser, who stopped a gang from shaking down a small-town diner owner. Some said it was a former cop. Others said it was just another reaper keeping his oath. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that somewhere out there, good men still rode the roads, watching out for those the system forgot. Because justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from the roar of an engine on a dark road and a promise kept in silence. If you believe bikers can be heroes too, share this story.